The night was thick with an unnatural stillness as Jake, an Uber driver looking to make some extra cash, navigated the desolate streets of a forgotten town. The dim glow of flickering streetlights cast eerie shadows on the dilapidated buildings, giving the area an unsettling ambiance. A new ride request popped up on Jake's screen, directing him to a remote part of town that seemed to have been erased from the map. Hesitant but motivated by the promise of a hefty fare, he followed the GPS instructions that led him deeper into the darkness. As the car wound its way through narrow, winding roads, the GPS signal became erratic, and the headlights barely penetrated the thick curtain of fog that enveloped the surroundings. Jake's nerves were on edge, but he pressed on, determined to reach his destination. Eventually, the GPS announced, "You have arrived." But all Jake could see was an abandoned mansion looming in the mist. Its windows were shattered, and the once grand facade now exuded an ominous energy. A shiver ran down Jake's spine, but the allure of a generous tip kept him from fleeing. Just as he was about to cancel the ride and speed away, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes approached the car. The stranger's voice, as cold as the night, whispered, "Thank you for coming. I've been waiting for you." The hairs on Jake's neck stood on end as the passenger got into the back seat. The man wore a tattered suit, and his icy gaze never wavered from Jake's reflection in the rearview mirror. The destination, according to the app, was an address that didn't exist. The car crawled through the fog, and an oppressive silence settled within the vehicle. Jake tried to break the tension with small talk, but the passenger remained stoic, fixated on the road ahead. With each passing moment, the atmosphere became increasingly surreal. As they approached an ancient cemetery, the GPS insisted they were getting closer to the phantom destination. The passenger's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and a voice echoed through the car, not from the speaker, but from the very air itself. "You can't escape now. You're part of this journey." Terrified, Jake attempted to slam on the brakes, but the car continued to drift through the cemetery gates, which swung open with a ghostly creak. The gravestones seemed to whisper tales of long-forgotten souls, and the shadows danced in unsettling patterns on the tombstones. The passenger spoke again, his voice now a haunting chorus of distant whispers. "I've been waiting for a driver like you, a soul willing to transport the lost to their final destination." Suddenly, the headlights illuminated a spectral procession of passengers, all with hollow eyes like the man in the back seat. They materialized from the mist, reaching out with ethereal hands toward Jackie, their faces contorted in silent anguish. Paralyzed by fear, Jake realized he had become a conduit for the departed, ferrying them to an otherworldly realm. The car moved forward, guided by an unseen force, as the chorus of whispers grew louder, enveloping him in a cacophony of sorrow. The journey continued into the unknown, the boundaries between the living and the dead blurring in the fog. The horror of that night would forever haunt Jake, the Uber driver who unwittingly became a charioteer for the souls lost in the shadows. It was a frigid Friday night when Mark, an Uber driver with a fascination for the supernatural, steered his way through the poorly illuminated streets of an unfamiliar town. The app pinged, signaling a pickup request from an enigmatic address on the city's outskirts. Despite a subtle unease that pricked at his senses, the allure of a substantial fare pushed Mark to accept the ride. Approaching the destination, a thick fog descended, shrouding the area in an eerie mist that obscured visibility to just a few feet. The GPS led Mark to a dilapidated mansion, rising from the mist like a spectral apparition. The gates groaned open, inviting him in. Anxious but curious, Mark took a deep breath and rolled into the ominous driveway. Ivy adorned the mansion's facade, and its windows emitted a feeble glow, casting an otherworldly ambiance. Mark double-checked the address, confirming that this was indeed the pickup location. A shiver ran down his spine as he waited, the seconds stretching into what felt like hours amid the oppressive silence. Abruptly, the mansion's front door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. A tall, slender man with piercing eyes approached the car, his face obscured by the darkness. He entered the back seat without uttering a word. Mark, unsettled by the enigmatic passenger, hesitated but initiated the trip as instructed. The man guided Mark through a labyrinth of deserted roads, twisting and turning into the unknown. Attempting small talk, Mark found his passenger unresponsive, fixated on the darkness outside. The only audible sounds were the rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional creak of the chassis. As they reached an isolated stretch of road, the man abruptly directed Mark to stop. Confused, Mark complied. The man exited the car, vanishing into the inky blackness. Mark strained his eyes, attempting to discern any signs of the mysterious passenger, but he was swallowed by the night. Unease escalated to fear as Mark heard faint whispers and eerie footsteps approaching the car. Panic set in, and he fumbled with his phone, desperately trying to cancel the ride. The whispers grew louder, and shadows danced in the periphery of his vision. In a final desperate attempt, Mark revved the engine and sped away from the haunted stretch of road. The fog clung to the car as if resisting its escape. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he half expected to see the ghostly figure in the back seat. After what felt like an eternity, Mark reached the city limits, the fog dissipating as if banished by the urban lights. He pulled over to catch his breath, hands trembling as he ended the trip. The mysterious passenger's fare was paid in full, but the experience left Mark questioning the thin veil between the living and the unknown, forever haunted by the memory of that fateful night. The night had draped the city in an inky blackness, its shadows weaving a tapestry of mystery and unease. Among the labyrinthine streets, Jake, a seasoned Uber driver, found himself entangled in the cobweb of dimly lit alleys. The city's usual hum of activity had given way to an unsettling quiet, broken only by the distant wails of sirens and the occasional rustle of leaves carried by an ominous wind. A notification blinked on Jake's phone screen, a new ride request emanating from an unfamiliar address. The pickup point was at the far end of a desolate cul-de-sac, a place seemingly forgotten by time. The houses, with their sagging roofs and overgrown lawns, stood like ancient sentinels guarding a long-forgotten secret. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, the lure of a high fare compelled Jake to navigate through the eerie stillness. As he turned into the desolate cul-de-sac, the sense of isolation deepened. The address pointed to a house that loomed in the darkness like a relic of a bygone era. Its windows were like vacant eyes, staring into the abyss. A figure, draped in a hooded cloak, emerged from the shadows as Jake approached. "Are you my ride?" The voice, barely audible, sent shivers down Jake's spine. His eyes scanned the hooded figure, but its face remained hidden in the shadows. Suppressing a growing sense of unease, Jake responded, "Yes, I'm your Uber driver. Hop in." The passenger glided into the back seat, the scent of decay clinging to their presence. As Jake stole a glance at the rearview mirror, he caught a fleeting glimpse of piercing, otherworldly eyes gleaming from the darkness of the hood. The destination was set, a distant and ominous location that raised the hair on the back of Jake's neck. The journey unfolded in an unsettling silence, punctuated only by the occasional creaks of the car and the distant howls of the wind. Jake's gaze frequently darted to the rearview mirror, where the hooded figure seemed to exude an aura of darkness that seeped into the very fabric of the car. As they approached the destination, an abandoned mansion perched atop a desolate hill. Jake's apprehension peaked. The passenger instructed him to stop, and the crumbling edifice of the mansion stared back at them, a haunting silhouette against the moonlit sky. "Why are we here?" Jake stammered, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The hooded figure turned slowly, revealing a ghastly skeletal visage. "You've entered my domain, mortal. A debt must be paid." Fear constricted Jake's chest as the realization dawned. This was no ordinary passenger. It was a specter, a soul seeking retribution. Panic set in, and he fumbled for his phone to call for help, but the screen displayed only static. "You disturbed my eternal slumber," the specter hissed, a cold wind swirling through the car. "Now, you must pay the toll." With a resounding click, the doors locked, trapping Jake inside. Desperation consumed him as he pounded on the windows, pleading for release. The specter's haunting laughter echoed through the car. In an ethereal surge of supernatural strength, the specter's icy fingers gripped Jake's arm, and searing pain shot through him. Memories flashed before his eyes, faces of those he had wronged, lives disrupted. The specter was a harbinger of karma, collecting dues from those who trespassed into its realm. As spectral retribution consumed him, Jake's screams merged with the howling wind. The abandoned mansion bore witness to the horror unfolding that night. The car, now an empty shell, sat at the entrance of the haunted estate, a silent testimony to the vengeful spirits that lurked within. News of Jake's ill-fated ride spread among Uber drivers like wildfire. The haunted cul-de-sac became a cautionary tale, a warning that some fares come at a cost beyond the monetary. Venturing into the unknown could lead to encounters with forces far darker than the night itself. The story of that fateful night lingered, a spectral whisper in the ears of those who dared to drive through the haunted streets after dark.